I'd like to welcome and introduce Matthew Collaton from CareerBuilder.com. Matt is the Senior Sales Manager at CareerBuilder, and he's here to talk to us about the 2011 job forecast and hiring trends that we've seen over the last year or so. Matt entered online recruitment and the advertising industry in 2005 with a startup website called jobsintheus.com. So he was one of the initial 6 people there, and the company grew from 6 to 62 employees in just 18 months. And then the company was bought by the Journal Register company. So in 2006, Matt joined a new venture of CareerBuilder, and that was CareerBuilder Canada, the Canadian entity, and now oversees the day-to-day operations of the junior and senior account teams here in Toronto, Canada. So welcome to Thought Rock Live, Matt, and thanks again for joining us today. So maybe you can start off by telling us a little bit about what you'll be talking about today and some of the key things from the hiring forecast that CareerBuilder has published. And just as a side note, before I pass it over to Matt, that the hiring forecast that I mentioned will be available via email after today's Thought Rock Live. So again, welcome, and over to you, Matt.
Sure. Thanks for the kind introduction, Lisa and Brad. The job forecast is something that CareerBuilder produces every year. We go about, with Harris Interactive, interviewing senior hiring managers and HR professionals based on their outlook for the upcoming year in terms of job growth, job creation, compensation, everything that would be valuable to both the employer and obviously the potential employees coming into that vertical organization. So we will get to that, but there are really today 3 things that I want to cover. And number 1 would be look at the economic data going into 2011 and recap Q4 2010. I don't think you can accurately reflect and look ahead without really looking on where we've come from over the past couple of years. And then I'll share the hiring forecast and compensation data for 2011, specifically related to the IT sector. Then we'll review best practices as it relates to being relevant and found on the web by potential hiring managers and recruiters. So, what's projected to happen? We got red-hot economies in China, India, Russia, and Brazil, all expected to grow at a clip of 9, 8, 6, and 5% respectively. The BRIC nations are hot. I know my investment advisor has a lot of my portfolio tied up in these countries, and looking at this data, I'm extremely optimistic based on that he knows what I'm doing more than I know what I'm doing from an investment standpoint. Really, what does this mean for North America? Canada is expected to grow at 2%, and the U.S. is expected to grow at 2.5% GDP in 2011. Then in 2012, the growth is set to switch back to Canada at 2.5% and the U.S. at 2%. Overall, we're seeing better growth in North America and a faster recovery than our friends across the pond in the European Union. As you've heard recently, the troubles with Spain and Greece have been in the news over the last few months. Here's another interesting trend, which is the weakening of the USD against other major currencies. This has actually helped the U.S. from an export perspective, but hurt Canada a great deal because Americans are more prone to buy U.S. manufactured products when the Canadian dollar rises. Because the Canadian product is no longer perceived as a good buy with the relevant rise in currency versus the USD. It is interesting to see just how rapidly the world's currencies have gained against the USD in the past 22 months and how it affects the various industries such as manufacturing in these nations. Again, you can see the euro is holding a line that is very close to the USD, just gaining slightly at 1.2%. Detailed here is the job loss and job recovery for the previous 4 recessions prior to the recession that we're working our way out of. As you can see in the other 4 recessions, job growth came back much more rapidly than in this recession. This has been the largest recession since the Great Depression. And you can see, although the signs are positive, we're still in a state of drastic underemployment. In each of the 4 recessions, by this time, we've seen job growth bounce back much quicker. Although, as you can see, the trend line is slowly, and again, I'll stress slowly, moving in the right directions once you take out those census workers. So what does that mean for job growth? Well, we're off to a good start. December 2010 saw 103,000 jobs added in the U.S. Overall, Q4 2010 saw over 350,000 jobs created in the U.S. Compare this data to where we were in 2008 and 2009, and you can start to see we're on a slow road to recovery. With this being said, I think we'll see underemployment in the U.S. go up before it goes down. This is because the eco-boomers are coming into the workforce and increasing the labor pool. I believe we will still see steady job growth throughout 2011, but rising unemployment due to this fact. In case any of you are curious, eco-boomers are children born from 1984 up to 2009. Baby boomers accounted for 76 million births per year during the baby boom, while the eco-boom, the second wave, has accounted for 104 million births a year. So those will be the people paying your retirement. Canada added 22,000 jobs in December. When compared against the December 2009, the Canadian economy lost almost 27,000 jobs. That's a 49,000 job swing year over year. The Canadian economy is a little different than the U.S. economy because it's such a resource-based economy. Think natural gas, oil sands, the Canadian Shield, and access to precious metals, gold, silver, and even copper. Many people refer to Canada and Australia as lucky countries because of the rich natural resources they possess.
So Matt, just a quick question there. In terms of job creation in Canada specifically, how does that break down in terms of the types of jobs? You know, full-time, part-time, seasonal. How does that break out in terms of what you're seeing in the numbers?
Well, what we're seeing is a lot of full-time permanent payroll positions come back. So last year, 2009 in particular, even 2008, you saw the jobs that were being created kind of in like the self-employment, contractor positions, temporary positions. It wasn't true job growth. So now you're starting to see companies bring on full-time salaried employees, and that's really a great economic indicator.
Okay,
it actually leads into my next slide. So the 2011 hiring forecast, more employers plan to add full-time permanent headcount in 2011 compared to 2010 with a continued emphasis on hiring in technology and revenue-producing fields. So discussed earlier, this is a survey we put together with Harris Interactive each year that surveys up to between 3,600 and 4,500 hiring managers across a broad spectrum of industries to really get a feel for what the hiring and compensation outlook is for the year. 2011 hiring by sector. Again, second to companies reinvesting in their sales force and other revenue-producing roles, in 2011, companies are expected to grow their IT departments. 26% of companies plan on hiring for full-time permanent IT positions, and I stress the full-time permanent IT positions. I also looked through some of our internal data to see what job seekers are searching for in the IT field, what's trendy so far in January 2011. You see people searching for application developers, software developers, .NET, Java developers. If I look today, the most IT job openings broken down state specifically are in California, Texas, New York, Illinois, and Virginia rounds out the top 5. If we look at projected 2011 in-demand IT jobs, what's going to be hot? Where are the jobs going to be? Here's, as surveyed by Harris, are the top 6 in-demand IT jobs for 2011. So if you have a skill that fits into one of these, you should be in high demand for 2011. According to employers, these will be the most coveted jobs in your industry in 2011. War for IT talent. As you can see, we're in a second wave of the dot-com period. Open sources like Facebook and apps for iPhones, Androids, etc. have created a hot job market for iPhone and Android developers, where the U.S. national average salary is now $110,000 for those positions, while the war for talent out in California between Facebook and Google have both companies offering up to $175,000 for those same positions. Google is giving their employee base a 10% raise in 2011 to attempt to stop the excess of skilled sales and IT development positions leaving their business. You're starting to see people leaving Google to start other companies. Dennis Crowley at Foursquare would be a great example. I believe this is mostly due to bigger bonus opportunities, potentially part of an IPO. Google's seen that day already. This slide just shows the number of hires by these 4 companies in 2010. As you're aware, many of these companies have focused on growing both their sales and IT departments throughout 2010. So in an economy that was not that stimulating in 2010 still, you saw what these 4 companies have done. Compensation. Here's some more positive comp data from our survey. 41% of employers are concerned that their best talent will leave their organizations once the economy improves. So this goes back to the fact that Google, again, being proactive in going out and giving that 10% raise across the board to keep employee morale up. So when the economy does turn around, there aren't a whole lot of people looking for greener pastures out there. So kudos to Google for being proactive in doing that. 61% of hiring managers and HR professionals said they will increase compensation for their existing staff in 2011. Again, another positive signal of economic recovery. 31% will provide higher initial job offers to candidates, and that's up from 29% last year. So again, another trend that is moving in the right direction. So I guess really, like, how can you position yourself for new opportunities in 2011? There are many ways you can position yourself to capitalize on this industry job growth. First, how can you be found? Both career networks and social media provide excellent opportunities to be relevant and found online. It's interesting because only about 4 years ago this slide would have been fairly one-dimensional. It would have just been about job boards, and the other column may have been newspaper, may have been trade publications. Things have changed so much with the emergence of the new media. Be ready. Update your resume every 6 months. Roles are always evolving. New projects are being taken on. Don't wait until you have to send your resume out to update it. Be searchable. Register to a database like CareerBuilder, Monster, and/or a niche site like SoloGig. Additionally, set career alerts. Is there a company you want to work for today? Go to their site, submit a resume, and if possible, set career alerts for new openings in your area and industry. Sometimes being first to market is not only an advantage in a consumer or service-based instance, but is also very relevant from a job application standpoint as well. Make sure you have at least one letter of recommendation ready to go. Ask for it before you need it. In many cases, these positions are created for new projects or contracts that have been won by the organization, and time is money to the hiring manager. Keep up to date on trends and industry changes. Better equip yourself to walk into an interview than that last-minute Google search searching for information on that industry or company. Set Google alerts based on your industry and know what is relevant to your future employer. Overall, the key takeaway on this slide is being prepared will give you the ability to send off a resume quickly and ultimately make you feel more confident walking into the interview to put your best foot forward. Facebook, the phenom that is Facebook. While Facebook can be a great tool in your job search and career networking, can also be something that puts a red light on a future employer pursuing you. Here are my simple best practices for Facebook. First off, be aware of your privacy settings. Be searchable, but don't be completely open, meaning anyone can access your wall posts, pictures, etc. If you want to use this space for personal use, this is even more critical. A potential employer could search you, read about your friend who thought it was a good idea that you skipped work to go to the matinee Cubs game down at Wrigley Field last Wednesday at 3. So again, be very careful because employers are now occupying this space and using it to research potential candidates. With
so,
that
Matt,
being, yeah.
Oh, I was just gonna ask there. So, and you may get to this as you move ahead, but so from Facebook and employers looking at Facebook at potential candidates, what are some of the benefits and how practically could I take advantage of that from a Facebook perspective?
As a potential employee or job seeker, the most important things are to update your educational data so that you have your education credentials up to date, and your employment history up to date on your Facebook profile. I'll get into that a little bit more, but companies are starting to target ads on Facebook. I think people have noticed that. I had a friend who recently got engaged, and I was explaining our concept of Facebook targeting through advertisements, and she said, oh, well, I changed my status from in a relationship to engaged, and now I'm getting targeted by ads that are wedding planners, photographers, banquet halls. So employers are starting to get smart with this space, knowing that people are spending more time there than anywhere else now online, and they're really working on getting their ads in front of that right ideal candidate. So really, Brad, with that being said, I mean, it can also be a great tool in professional networking and passive job searching. Employers are starting to build out company pages, feed career opportunities through their Facebook page. So this leads to my second point, like be up to date, make sure it's current, as I stated. And more companies are buying this ad space because it is so highly targeted. So for example, they could advertise to Java developers with 2 to 5 years experience, living within a 50-mile radius of Austin, Texas. Now, I don't know where else you can do that. This is a great passive way to find new opportunities that didn't exist a few years ago. So I would recommend watching those privacy settings, but at the same time making sure that education, employment info is up to date. Another great use for Facebook is industry-specific groups and conversation. I did a quick search last week and found many ITIL groups. This one above is the largest. It has over 13,000 fans. I know the term is likers, but I can't get used to that, so I'm sticking with fans for the sake of this presentation and the sake of all my presentations going forward until they make me change. Additionally, another search query brought up ITIL Jobs, which has 700 plus fans. Both of these groups would be excellent networking opportunities that share both thought leadership and become aware of opportunities through this new digital word of mouth, which is taking a mind of its own. Really, out of the big three, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, Twitter is the one that I have the least familiarity with, to be honest. I think personally that comes from the lack of overall engagement. I look at Twitter as more of a link to other great things on the web. I mean, that being said, there are some uses for Twitter professionally and in a job search. First, Twitter can help or hurt you. Again, going back to my warning about Facebook, build your online profile and brand. Things to consider: Twitter results show in Google. So again, be aware of what you're tweeting. The benefits are it shows up, and you have a voice, you have an opinion, and you're able to be searched. It makes you more of an interesting person. I mean, really, I'm a hiring manager. Who would I rather interview if two people's resume credentials were exactly the same? Someone I had the opportunity to learn more about, or someone I couldn't. I'd be interested in the person who's taken the initiative and building a brand. Twitter, again, has been adopted by many enterprise organizations looking to hire. They're now tweeting links to available jobs. I would recommend following companies you may be interested in working for now or in the future, learning about the content they're tweeting, and ultimately it may provide you a link to your dream job. LinkedIn. Now, here's a media that lends itself to a purely professional environment. But with that said, please be aware you can link a Twitter feed to your LinkedIn account. And as one of my reps has found out the hard way, his whole professional network and client base were aware that he was keeping a beautiful people on the subways of Toronto daily tweet. So be warned. LinkedIn, in many ways, is becoming an online employment history directory. I heard one person call it the other week the new resume. If you're not on LinkedIn yet, getting started is very easy. You go to the site, register as you would anywhere else, complete the profile. 100% completion is recommended because the more relevant you are, the higher you're going to return in employers and recruiters' searches. So again, make sure that you're updating all your education, work history, and projects that you worked on and or completed in the past. Once you're there, start connecting with people in your industry or across other industries. There's a viral nature to LinkedIn, as well as meaning that you'll see whose connections are doing what and who they're connecting with. Join a few industry discussion groups, stay current and involved.
Quick question there, Matt, on LinkedIn and being a part of LinkedIn. and having a number of connections. And for anyone who's not part of LinkedIn, there's a feature where you can refer someone or provide a testimonial about how great it was to work with somebody. Now, the interesting thing is what happens typically is that one person refers another person, and that person reciprocates with a referral back. Now, if we talk about it in Google terms, reciprocal connections, or referrals in this case, kind of cancel each other out because it seems a little bit fabricated. So how important is it in your LinkedIn profile in terms of having referrals, and how important is it to have unreciprocated referrals versus reciprocated ones?
That's a good question, Brad. And I mean, it's kind of like the, you scratch my back, I'll scratch your theory. And I've read a lot on LinkedIn recommendations over the last little while. And there are a lot of people going out there and, hey, I'll recommend you if you recommend me, or I'll only do it if you recommend me. And I think that's pretty transparent. But I would say don't be afraid to ask for recommendations. I mean, I would recommend having a mix of recommendations, so not just peer-to-peer. Ask a direct supervisor, or even their boss, or somebody who was head of a project that you worked on. Or if you were head of a project, ask people who report it to you to give you a recommendation. I mean, if they don't feel comfortable doing it, they probably aren't going to do it. And really the way I look at it is better to have some sort of recommendations if you're looking to use this for professional networking and potentially being found by an employer than having none at all.
Okay, great.
Excellent. I appreciate the time. I hope that it was insightful. I am going to be providing Brad a copy of the job forecast that will be emailed out to you. I'd also like to offer out my contact details. Should anybody have any questions beyond this they wanted to ask offline, feel free to reach out to me with an email. I'm glad that we had the opportunity to speak today.
That's great. Thanks very much, Matt. We do have a couple of questions that maybe we can touch on. This one I think goes back a little bit, but you talked about a 26% increase in terms of the staff that companies are looking to hire in the IT sector. And so any information in terms of how that breaks down, whether that's direct U.S. Canadian employees or a nearshore, offshore, and any insight you can give us around how what the makeup of that 26%.
Sure. All the 2011 job forecast data that I went through was full-time, permanent IT positions. So we do have some data beyond that in terms of contract positions, temporary positions, but that is all full-time, U.S.-based headcount. So that's one of the reasons that I'm extremely optimistic that they're bringing back sales and IT positions, because ultimately those are the things that companies invest in when the economy starts heading in the right direction to create new revenue streams.
Okay, and what's your perspective on how that breaks down from an onshore, offshore labor market?
Sorry, could you clarify?
So just in terms of the jobs, are they full-time? So we broke down kind of full-time, part-time. From the job perspective of jobs that are going to other countries, some of the ones you mentioned from the BRIC perspective, so India and China and things like that, what are your thoughts as to what the trend's going to be from an onshore or offshore perspective for what's attractive to employers that are looking to hire?
I really don't, again, have a great handle or perspective on what's going to go on in those emerging markets. I mean, they're going to grow. The data that I was speaking about in regards to the job forecast is just onshore U.S. data. So if I look at India and try to project what the job growth is going to be there, I'm not an expert in that market, nor am I an expert in the Chinese market at this point, but I've got a pretty good handle on what's going on in North America.
Okay, great. So just to cap things off from a practical perspective, in your mind, what are the top things that folks that are looking at this information and might be looking for either to change jobs, change industries, or find a job in general? What are the top 2 or 3 things practically from an advice perspective that they should be doing or should be thinking about?
First and foremost, be up to date. Be quick to market. Like I said, we're still in a point of underemployment, so for a lot of these roles, recruiters or hiring managers are getting flooded with resumes in some circumstances. So they're going to prioritize their time. So act first, be up to date, be quick, and be ready to go. If you're looking to make a change, don't wait until the ideal job comes up to have those letters of recommendation ready, or your profile up to date on LinkedIn or any of those medias, or an up-to-date resume to send to a job. You want to be acting as quickly as possible and giving yourself the best chance to succeed and be searchable online. So that's where those other career networks come into play, a CareerBuilder, a Monster, a Dice, a Solo Gig, in terms of updating your profile, getting in there, and being searchable as well.
All right, that's great. So again, thanks, Matt Collaton from CareerBuilder.com. Lots of great information and timely as we come into 2011, with the market still being fairly volatile, but definitely good signs all around that the economy is headed in the right direction. So definitely timely information. We hope that everybody had got some good information. If you have any questions as follow-up, Matt's contact information is there, as well as the ThoughtRock info at thoughtrock.net. So you can contact either or both. As a follow-up to this, the presentation will be made available, as well as the information that Matt was talking about specifically in terms of the hiring forecast. And don't forget about next week. Graham Furness will be back in the driver's seat at ThoughtRock Live talking about change management. So please come back and join us for that. And other than that, if there aren't any more questions, I'm just going to take a quick look. I don't think there are. So that's great. So thanks for all the information, Matt. It was fantastic.
Thanks, Brad. Appreciate it.